Let's talk about the Tea Party for a minute.
Okay.
What kind of an impact has this had on your political existence over the past year?
Well, it's been very interesting. And so what I know about the Tea Party groups is they're not all Tea Parties. There are 912 groups, there are Patriot groups, there are center-right groups, and there's another one out there, and none of them talk to one another.
That is something that I've heard a lot about.
And there is no form, structure, or leadership per se, but when I meet with them, for me, it is really exciting because they are digging. They are actually researching and trying to actually, I think, put some control in their lives. And you know, they're angry and they're scared, but they're finding out about their government. That just tickles me to death. So sometimes the dots are connected really well, and the questions come out as, you know, an assumption, are you going to do this? And the assumptions weren't quite right, and that's okay. For me, you know, once you get to that point, then you have a dialogue. That's exciting.
Does it keep you on your toes that they're not organized, that there's no central command, that there's just a bunch of them and they're firing off all these different questions?
It does keep me on my toes, and of course, you know, I have a lot of issues that I want to talk about. So do I honor the Constitution? And sometimes there are some parts of the groups that want to make it too black and white. Even the Constitution is not so black and white. And there is a lot of confusion between federal, state, and local. A lot of confusion. And one of the things that I get hit with all the time is at the federal level, they have pork. They have park down to a fine art. And as you know, in our state, we don't. Mm-hmm. We actually have a constitution that says in a given bill, you can't literally put non-germane attachments on it. The federal government would benefit from that. Do we always obey it? Not quite, but generally we do. Mm-hmm. So that part's been fun. And talking about the differences has been certainly a good intellectual exercise for me.
It makes my job more interesting, I'll tell you that.
I bet.
We have a few questions here
Yes.
from Twitter,
Cool.
and we just have a couple minutes left, so I'll ask you to have short answers to these. Katie wants to know, what's your stance on abortion rights?
Do you know what? I am a person who believes life is sacred from conception until natural death. Unfortunately, our lives are not as neat as that. And I will tell you that I had a friend in high school who was pregnant. There was no place for her to go. So she ran herself into a bridge abutment. She died and the baby died. My God does not want that. So would I find lots of other options before we have that option? But abortion, unfortunately, for me, is the rule of the land. But I just come at it from a different perspective. And I understand. I don't like that decision at all. And I think that we need more babies in our country, believe it or not. When you look at our country being able to compete worldwide, I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would say we need more babies, but it's true.
And another question here from Katie, or no, let me ask you from Leali. Where do you stand on federal climate change legislation?
Federal climate change. If we're talking about the cap and trade legislation, I think that is folly. I think anytime you insert a separate entity that is going to swap and sell a commodity, seen or unseen, can you say middleman? I just don't trust it. I don't like it. Swaps and derivatives got us into trouble. It is the same model, and I reject that.
Okay. And what rights do you think citizens and communities should have to stop polluters that threaten their health and property? That's also from Leali.
Well, you know, I actually think that we are not an island. And so anybody who is contaminating their neighbor's groundwater has to be held to account. You know, when you do regulation, it is for the health, safety, and welfare of all the citizens. Now, should you impose a rule from Santa Fe in, say, Ruidoso that has no bearing on the community of Ruidoso? No. No, you need to talk to the community. But one neighbor to the other, for example, a good example in Albuquerque, changing oil in your backyard, multiple cars and dumping the oil in the ground. I have a problem with that because that impacts neighbors on all sides as well as the groundwater. I'm sorry, you can't do that, even if it is your property. And so I think you have to use a lot of common sense, but no one's an island.